Good morning. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. It is Thursday, November 9th, and we're here for the formal presentation of the 2024 proposed Westchester County budget. I'm joined by Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins, Director of Operations Joan McDonald, Deputy Director of Operations Emily Saltzman, and our Budget Director Larry Sewell. With us here for this presentation, in a few minutes, we will invite two prominent members of the Westchester County Board of Legislators to receive the budget and take it off of our hands and it becomes their problem. The Vice Chair of the Board of Legislators, Nancy Barr, and the head of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, Jewel Williams-Johnson. Let me congratulate both of them on their successful reelection this past week. We're also joined by our county clerk, Tim Idoni, who has served us very well for a very long period of time, and he has stake in this budget as well, and we're very happy to have Tim with us here. I'm joined by numerous commissioners. I checked with them before we started as to whether they were mandated to be here or not. They said they were here voluntarily, so we'll take that at face value. But we're appreciative of their presence here. The substance of this budget that we'll talk about in general terms is much the work of each of them in their respective departments to be able to try to help us go forward in the year to come. I see we're also joined by Marlene Pena, who is a PLA for Legislator Terry Clements. We're happy to have her present. And if there's any others that I need to recognize, please let me know, Ken, and we'll make sure we get from there. We operate in Westchester County on a calendar year fiscal year, meaning that January 1st begins our budget year, as does the calendar year for all of us. So the 2024 budget needs to be in place by New Year's Day, January 1st. This county government, regardless of who the county executive was and who populated the County Board of Legislators, has never failed to have an on-time budget, and we've never failed to have a balanced budget. Our budgets are reviewed ultimately by the New York State Comptroller to determine whether they are fiscally sound in the way they're prepared, and we have not been found to have ever submitted a budget that was not appropriate. I say that not because it's automatic. There are questions that happen at other levels of government. I served in the New York State Legislature. New York State budgets can be late at times and can be difficult documents to get done on time, and the federal government does not have a budget. They have continuing resolutions. You'll hear more about that in the days to come, in which they continue to maintain the operation of the government. But I'm very proud, as a person who served both as a legislator and now as executive, that Westchester County has not had that type of issue in the past, and we do not anticipate it for the future. At the end of this process, as we deliver this budget to the Westchester County Board of Legislators, they will then go through a deliberative process that will include public hearings and committee meetings by the Budget and Appropriations Committee over a series of consecutive days. The various commissioners who are with us here in the room today will go before them to answer questions about how their budgets were constructed, to defend not just the dollar amounts, but the substance and the programs that are funded in each of these different departments. And I have every confidence that the questions that are asked will be fully answered and faithfully answered so that the legislature can draw their judgments. They will announce shortly their schedule of activities, and we look forward to participating with them in that process. I believe they've established Monday, December 11th as a date for final action on the budget, and we're hopeful that all of the things that we have to negotiate and discuss will be done. I certainly expect changes to the budget that we're presenting today to show the will of the legislative body and as they go through this process. So this is a dynamic environment. We began this process by delivering a capital budget a month ago, and we also had a public forum of our own, getting public input from many of the organizations and people in the county, many of the not-for-profits that are here today, representing child care and health care and other areas of public policy, have interacted in that process with us. The budget that will be presented to the legislature today and to the public, it'll be available on our website for any individual review, is a $2.4 billion budget, and it continues the programs that we have been committed to over the last number of years. That 2.4 number reflects, amongst other things, the influx of ARPA money that came from the federal government that came in as a revenue and goes out as expenditure. What that has the effect of doing is raising the overall spending in the budget, but not raised because we have decided to spend wildly or excessively, but because we had a particular resource that came from the federal government to help us recover from the COVID crisis, which we are applying in various ways to do things, whether it's affordable housing or funding districts, sewer districts, to help us recover back up from what happened during COVID. So the $2.4 billion number reflects that as a revenue and an outgo and increases the overall structure of the budget. We have made a commitment, both the legislature and the executive, in the last number of budgets that we've passed, to be fiscally sound and prudent in what we present to the people of Westchester County. That fiscal prudence has no ideological attachment to it. The people of Westchester County, whatever their political beliefs are, in their own private lives, in their own professional lives, are people of accomplishment and skill. And they expect to see budgets that are properly balanced, budgets that properly address the issues at hand, for which the funding streams are accurate projections of revenue and the expenditures are justifiable, and where they involve personnel or they involve equipment and a host of other different things, that it all be defensible, which is what over the next few days we have. And we know that the members of the press, too, will ask pointed questions, and we will be as responsive and as candid as we can be. There are two judgments on our budget that will be made external from our government. I mentioned one already. The New York State Comptroller reviews all policy budgets that come out of local governments, cities, towns, villages, school districts, special districts, and county governments as well. And at some point, they will have to certify that this is a properly structured and balanced budget. There's also the review that comes from the bond rating agencies. No government can afford to do all of the work it has to do without going to the bond market to borrow money to take on capital projects and so forth. And three major rating agencies, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch, analyzes each of those different organizations that have a presence in the bond market. As it stands today, we have the second highest rating that we can have within each of those three organizations, AA+ for Standard & Poor's and Fitch, and AA1 for Moody's. We have stable reviews from two of them, and one of them has us on a positive outlook. That was not the case a couple of years ago. We had AAA bond rating for many years, and we were downgraded just at the beginning of my tenure for the period of time that was audited up to the end of 2017. As we took office in 2018, we knew that rebuilding the confidence in the bond market of the stability of Westchester County meant doing our best to raise our bond rating. And AAA bond ratings are hard to come by. In Westchester County, there are a number of municipalities that have it, and the county itself has it. And we have shown, I believe, over the last few years, to the benefit of Westchester County cost of borrowing, that we have stability, and we've made stable policies that give the rating agencies the sense that we are a responsible government. We have closed out 2023's budget and in past budgets by not borrowing to pay for tax certiorari's, not borrowing to pay for pension costs, which are assessed to us annually, not borrowing for cash flow problems, and not going into our fund balance, in essence, our savings account, to pay for ongoing expenditures. Those fiscal practices, when they happen, are a sign of unstable financial realities. And we have tried to show in Westchester County under this administration and working alongside of this Board of Legislators that we have stable fiscal policy. And that's important. When we make a commitment to a not-for-profit that we're going to do something, when we make a commitment on economic development to a business committee, we back up that commitment. The funding will be there. We also recognize that we're in a climate where we are not the sole engine of decision-making. The New York State budget is one that we are closely involved with and tied to because of the state's policies that affect county governments. And we also know that the federal government has a role to play as well in this. This budget for 2024 reflects a positive outlook for Westchester for 2024 in keeping with what we've done in the last few years, but I have to be very clear, and I think the legislature understands this as they too read the same tea leaves that I do. The state budget processes that are ahead are problematic. The state has projected that they face a budget gap initially for the 24-25 budget, which they would hope to close by April 1st. The decisions they make to close their budget gap may well affect our county. It did in the past year when they did the 23-24 budget. They withheld money for Medicaid reimbursement, and they also added some additional costs, worthwhile expenditures, but they put those burdens on the county government and hit us in the middle of a budget year. We expect that to happen again. Everybody should understand that things that will be beyond our control will happen. As we project ahead, the state's concerns are there not only for the next budget year, but an even higher potential gap for the year after that, depending on the decisions that are made in Albany. And then we have to look at the situation in Washington, which is highly unstable. We don't know how the government will function if with continuing resolutions to continue the operation of the federal government. And we have next year a major decision as to who will be the President of the United States. And when that decision is made, the policies in the beginning of 2025 on fiscal policies might change. And if they change, they will affect this county government. So we have to be as thoughtful as we can about doing all of these things. And that is why we have avoided any of these borrowing mechanisms that give us greater expenditures in the year to come. We don't borrow for one-shot expenditures. And most importantly, the single biggest question that we're asked when we speak to people is, what happens to my tax levy? What happens to my tax rate? For the last 4 years, we've been able to reduce county property taxes by a little bit each year. As of this past budget, we taxed less for county property taxes than we did the day we walked into office. Less over the course of that 4-year period. It didn't happen in 1 year. It had happened over a series of years. This year, we are not increasing the tax levy, so it's frozen. And that freezes the continuation of where we are compared to the day we walked into the office. So this is a zero tax increase year, following 4 straight years of cuts. And I think that record is probably unmatched in our recent history as a county government. The important thing, though, is not just our fiscal policies, it's how do we spend the money and what do we do with that money to better the lives of Westchester residents. And I tell you that we are continuing our commitment in every area of public policy that we have made in the past. We have a commitment on health and mental health. That commitment includes continuing to fund Black maternal mortality programs. That continues our commitment, direct commitment to federally qualified health centers. That we have a commitment to help educate for tobacco cessation, reduce the amount of tobacco usage amongst our young people, that we continue to commit ourselves to telehealth mechanisms for senior citizens, and we continue to fund our mental health crisis response teams, Project Alliance, which came out of the police reform movement, to try to help get better outcomes when certain interactions happen. All of those programs, $11.4 million in this budget, and every single one of those commitments are continued to be made in the new year. We continue our program in social services, our child care scholarship program, expanding the eligibility in this program. We've been doing this over the last number of years. We continue that commitment in this budget, and we continue our commitment to food security funding, $1.3 million. And we understand that in this county, as wealthy as Westchester is, the popular perception of us being a county that is filled with millionaires and billionaires, that there are people in need in this county. I grew up in a neighborhood of need. I know it personally from what I saw every day of my life. We continue to fund for food security and similar initiatives. This is a county where we have a bipartisan commitment to environmental protection. It crosses the aisle. We saw that a year ago with the Environmental Bond Fund vote here in Westchester County. 70% of our residents voted for that to happen. We are continuing and expanding our electric vehicle charging station program in this budget. And we have a grant program where we will assist local governments in expanding their electric vehicle charging. So not only what we do ourselves on county-owned facilities, but what we do to help local governments afford to be able to expand that infrastructure. The more the infrastructure grows for electrical vehicles, the more likely it is people will have electrical vehicles and take us off of traditional petrol use. That is what we do with our Beeline bus system. And that is what other individuals are making as an individual decision. We continue our commitment to food scrap recycling, which helps take certain amounts of things out of the waste stream. Historically, we've reduced our waste and what we dispose of at the Wheelabrator facility significantly over the last 15 to 20 years, and we're committed to continue to reduce that to lower numbers each year, and that involves not just food scraps, but aggressive recycling across the board, and we see examples of where we can go forward in that. We're committed to housing. There's been quite a lot of debate about what direction we go in housing, and sometimes the housing is argued as market rate as well as affordable. Well, we clearly see an affordability crisis. We had a report that's now 4 years old that showed that we need at least 11,000 new units of affordable housing in Westchester County. We brought online about 2,500 of that amount. We've got about another 4,000 in the pipeline in various stages of possibilities, and that need has probably grown now to 15,000, maybe 18,000 units in this county. Affordability is a major problem in this county, and the level of affordability, not just for people who are at the 60 or 80% of AMI, but people who approach the 50 and the 40 and the 30% of income at AMI. Some of the need that we have cannot be done by the county alone. We need assistance from the federal government, Section 8 program assistance. We have had good cooperation from the state, but we are putting in this budget, you may have seen some of it already in our capital budget, $40 million for an affordable housing investment flex fund, where we'll use county money to try to close the financing gap that sometimes is the inhibition of being able for someone to develop a building and have affordable housing units in it. And we've committed $50 million in this budget, which continues our commitment for money that can be used for new land acquisition for affordable housing, and also for implementation of infrastructure uses. And depending on the site, it may take a certain amount of money to make the site usable for development, and we have some money available for that. We do that separate and distinct in this budget from what we do through our IDA, in which we incent certain projects and we ask for a certain level of affordability in that. Our economic development commitment is prominent. We're going to continue our downtown improvement grant program, $1.5 million in allocation to work with local governments in downtowns, particularly the smaller ones, where they don't have access to any grants. We help them with this program, and we look forward to a brighter day in those areas. Our workforce training program that we're doing in concert with one of our major associations for business leaders, $300,000 investment for valuable job training opportunities for individuals. Our tourism sector, ARPA funded, $2.1 million to promote Westchester County as a tourist destination, and while people may not see tourism on the same level of importance as other public policy areas, that generates revenue that turns into hotel occupancy tax revenue and sales tax revenue, and it gives people a reason when they decide where they want to live. I think I'll move to Westchester County. So we see that as being an important public policy. We have sector strategies of economic development that are in this budget, $3.7 million. We have Bridget Gibbons and her team ably under the direction of Joan and Emily in implementing a host of different things. Launch 1000, a biosciences accelerator, Element 64. All of these things are designed to foster economic growth. I've said before that the role of the county government is to be an ally. We are not the agent for development. We're not the agent for economic growth, but we are an ally in that process, and we work with business community and developers to try to advance this, because the rising tide raises all boats. When these companies grow, they hire people, and the people who are looking for jobs in this community, people of color, women, people all across the demographic sector, will find job opportunities, and they will have a better life even as a business grows in this situation. We've committed in this budget for money for emergency services and public safety. We have fully funded all budgeted positions in our emergency services department and our ongoing threat assessment management operations, and I must sadly say that we need to devote more energy and effort and attention to those potential threats as they exist for so many different reasons. We have, through our Human Rights Commission, efforts to deal with the rise in anti-Semitism, the rise in racism, the rise in anti-Asian hatred, and anti-LGBTQ community hatred. And in all of these different areas, we need to do things that we think will be important and helpful in all of those different areas. I want to highlight as well, I know this is kind of long, but this is the substantive part of government. Some of it is symbolic. Some of government is you give a speech and you touch people's hearts. Some of it is you show that you have the hard-headed understanding of what it takes to actually move things forward. And that's essential if you want to accomplish something. And that's why we're taking this time. In our planning department, we have programs to deal now with the increase of flood concerns. We've seen yet another cycle of flooding. We're going to add a director of flood mitigation and resiliency in that department, headed by Blanca Lopez, our commissioner of planning. We are funding non-for-profit organizations in each part of the county to help assistance to families in need of relocation and recovery. This has not traditionally been something that the county government has done. We also are putting money aside for on-call planning consultants. Many of the smaller communities in our county who face these issues do not have the resources themselves. And we can't just say, go ahead, good luck, to smaller villages that have responsibility but no resources necessary to do it. And when we look at tax impact, when the county is working with a village, a town, or a small city, we're helping save property taxes with that community's taxpayers so that their local government doesn't have to compensate by spending that much more money. We have a tremendous mental health program led by our Commissioner Michael Orth and his team. We have an outpatient clinic expansion, which Legislator Jewel Williams-Johnson advocated for in last year's budget. This year, a pilot program to expand that capacity. We're spending almost $1 million to try to reduce the wait lists in that area. We've talked before about housing construction, but on the housing consumption side, if you will, the Landlord Tenant Assistance Program, we're funding $7 million for housing authorities for necessary repairs of rental properties. And housing authorities deal with the lowest income people in our world. The Eviction Prevention Assistance Program, the Board of Legislators passed and I signed into law an access to counsel legislation. Only New York City has something like this. No other county in New York State has this. And in it, we're looking at providing eviction prevention legal services so that if you are indigent, indigent. Right now, you're protected if you're charged with a criminal matter. You go to court and you have a court-assigned lawyer on a criminal matter. But you don't have that on a civil matter, such as an eviction case. And that is what we're striving to work with. We've done it working with grants, and now we have it as an access as a law. We have innovative programs like the HERO, H-E-R-R-O, scholarship program to help those who volunteer in EMS or fire department units and to give them assistance for tuition if they're going into a schooling situation. We are adding 2 emergency services positions, a fire instructor and a program administrator for grants. And this is an important area. Just consider the legislation that's been recently passed for lithium-ion batteries. This obviously is not something I have ever done, but fighting a lithium-ion battery fire is fundamentally different from fighting a traditional fire. There needs to be more training and more attention put into that, and once again, smaller departments, volunteer departments need to look somewhere for that help. This county government intends to do that. We continue our commitment to the not-for-profit organizations in all of this. And the continuation is important because we recognize that there is a diminution of other sources that happen. And I know the Board of Legislators puts a very close eye on this. And we will take counsel from what the board comes back with. And any amendments we make to this budget in this area and in other areas, we will take to heart and negotiate it through. But we have been committed to our not-for-profit organizations. And you need sometimes to stop and take an historical view. Go back 10 years. Where was this county in helping not-for-profits? Where are we today? We're far ahead of where we were then. And we have the intellectual commitment, and now we try to back it up with the financial commitment over the course of these years. This Board of Legislators this year has had a difficult year. The election that just came, however, was the voice of the voters relative to the Board of Legislators. And this Board of Legislators, with whatever has happened this year, passed the Access to Counsel legislation. This Board of Legislators passed an important bill, Nancy Barr, Erica Pierce, to try to reduce the amount of single-use plastics. And then 4 additional pieces of legislation. I want to compliment Steve Bass and Ken Jenkins and Ellen Hendricks of our team that helped work with the board to pass 4 additional pieces of environmental legislation, all important. And when they passed a truthful disclosure law to try to root out the fraudulent claims of candidates running for office. And all of these different pieces of legislation, all of them have happened just in the last year. That's a productive record, and I'm proud to be working with this board to do that. In that same spirit, I'm proud to work with this board in this budget. I do not anticipate needing to pull out a veto pen. I think where we have disagreements, we will work through them. We will show you in White Plains County government, which you don't always see in Albany and Washington. We will work across the aisle. My friends who are in another political party have a voice in this process. They are not shut out from this process. I was once the minority leader of this legislature. I understand what it's like to be on the low side of a political structure and wondering if you had any voice at all in these matters. But I say to you, so that you understand the way we think about these things, there is a purpose for bipartisan discussion and agreement where it is possible. And if it isn't possible, that doesn't mean we're enemies. It doesn't mean we hate each other. We're all Americans. We're all residents of this county, and we want as positive a county to go forward as possible. It's not possible, even with a 25-minute narrative, to tell you all of the things that are in this budget. This budget will be scrutinized by the legislature and by the public at large. The board will announce when and where they have a series of public hearings, and I know that they welcome that testimony, and when and where they have, under Legislator Johnson's direction, meetings of the Board of Budget and Appropriations to discuss these issues in some detail. And those are open meetings to the public. And so we encourage you to be part of this. This is something you must appreciate. Having served in state government as a state legislator, there is no particular forum where you, the individual, can sit and listen to state legislators discussing a budget. It doesn't exist that way. The federal government, impossible. But here at the county government, it is very possible, other than the limits to the size of a meeting room. And they stream the meetings. The meetings are streamed. You can watch this. So even if people say, I don't know, you're a citizen and you have certain rights. You have certain responsibilities. And if you are going to, come January 1st, complain about what isn't being done, then you have a responsibility to interact in the process, to understand it. Is it complicated? Yes. Is it important? It is. It is. It doesn't frame itself as neatly as an argument over some national issue, but it's important. And we have presented a budget that we think is defensible, but we're prepared to make adjustments to it. We're prepared to work with the legislature. We're prepared to listen to the voices of the community. And at the end of the day, as our administration has for the last 5 years, we intend to have a completed budget on time, in place, balanced, and ready to go, so that the residents of Westchester County can have confidence that we understand how to run this government and that we prepare to run it well. Let me close my narrative by thanking the people who stand next to me. There is no way that I could accurately tell you how many times Ken and Joan and Emily and Larry, and by extension other people in this room, Steve Bass and Ellen Hendricks and Catherine Chaffee from a communications standpoint, John Nona, the county attorney, how much I have relied on their counsel to put us in the right direction. How many times we have talked with individual members of the legislature to get a feel. How many times we've had people from the various advocacy communities, even when the advocacy is in opposition to each other, to input the process. I value that. And I think that sometimes is one of the missing elements of government. People may not see it. Sometimes I think we get lost in the idea that government is the person who's doing the talking, and it isn't. It's a host of talented people. And I've gone through their resumes because I know what each of them have done, and I could give them a 10-minute introduction before each of them stood up in front of people. But only I can appreciate how much I value their input. And I want to let you know that we would not have the county government that we have if it wasn't for Ken Jenkins, Joan McDonald, Emily Saltzman, Larry Sewell, Steve Bass, Ellen Hendricks, Catherine Chaffee, John Nona, and all of these commissioners who are in this room. Some of them are newer, some of them have been here longer, but every single one of them has my respect and appreciation. And I think they know that, and I hope they know that. We're going to close off the presentation side of this. We want to formally present the budget to our two legislative colleagues, and then I will take on-topic questions relative to the budget from our friends in the press, and then for those who may have off-topic questions, once our friends who are here for this purpose leave the room, I'm happy to be available for off-topic questions. But first, Madam Vice Chair Nancy Barr and Madam Chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, Jewel Williams-Johnson, come up here and take in the poundage. Oh, I'm sorry. I've missed that both legislators David Tubiolo and legislative Minority Leader Margaret Kunze have also asked their representatives to be here today. We're very appreciative for their involvement, and the legislators as well. So, still not too old to pick it up. This is the 2024 operating budget for Westchester County. My friends, this is now your budget. It's your headache. Good luck. Godspeed. And we will be available to be with you and answer any questions. If you'd like to say a few words, I invite you to the microphone.
I'd just like to say thank you, George. We're looking forward to spending many hours working on this budget over the next month and a half. This is my 6th year doing this with this administration, and I have to say it is not a bad process. It's actually a very good process. It's collaborative, and we really appreciate that we get budgets that are as good as they are, so there is not so much that we have to do. So thank you very much on behalf of the Board of Legislators today, and I will have my colleague, the chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, say a few words as well.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair, and thank you to the county executive and his whole team. As chair of the Committee on Budget and Appropriations, I do look forward to analyzing this budget, and I look forward to the meetings that start on Monday with all of the county departments. I thank you in advance for all of your work, but not only that, for your patience with us starting next week. I wholeheartedly do thank you for everything that you do in support of the residents of Westchester County. We're aware that the status of our country and globally, we are in a bit of uneasiness, to say the least. But we, on the Board of Legislators, will review the budget with a lens focused on fiscal stability and what really matters to the people of Westchester County. The quality of life issues across the board for everyone, no matter what level you're at. As the county executive said, the board and the county executive's team and administration, we have a really good synergy, good working relationship. So we look forward to the negotiations with everything I said in mind. And again, thank you so very much.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Nancy. Just before I take questions, permit me a final comment. I am a student of history. When you have a BA in history, you wonder how the heck you're going to use it in the rest of your life. Unless you become a historian, I'm not really sure what you do with it. But the history, much beyond Westchester County, the history of the world shows that the vast majority of governments that have ever existed without what we know as democracy. This democracy, this county, towns, villages, the state, the federal government, this is still an experiment. We're a couple of years shy of 250 years. 250 years is a blip on the screen of the history of mankind. And the vast majority of governments that have ever ruled have been under military leadership, religious leadership, the divine right of kings, where you were born with noble blood. And if you didn't have noble blood, you were a peasant, and you spent your life working for the king to do whatever the king wanted. We all think differently, even if we have ideology on the spectrum from far right to far left. And we believe that democracy is the better way to go. And democracy is messy. Democracy does not work as fast as totalitarianism works. We believe that everybody having some stake in the discussion matters philosophically, that somehow we will get a better result because of that. And this is a very small portion of this country, just one county of 1 million people in a nation of 300 some odd million people. But we do our job today. We do it substantively, we do it well, and we're making a cosmic statement about democracy. The world is not going to remember who was in charge of this county for 2024 when we reach the next millennial. But it does matter that we do it, and we do it well. That's our challenge over the next month. I look forward in performing that responsibility with my colleagues on the Board of Legislators, and I look forward to the involvement of the public and the press in doing that. And if we do it right, it's a little victory for democracy.